Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fat Self Care Club. This is our Fat Friend chat. And I'm so excited because tonight we have someone who I think is lovely. I've been following you, Kate, for a while. You may know her as the girl with the microphone, and you may have seen her yelling at Trump supporters, which is a beautiful hobby, and I truly support it. But tonight I'm really excited because we are, for the first time, going to share this on YouTube for everyone to watch. And um, I'm so happy that Kate, you wanted to do that because I think it's really nice to bring everybody in. Um, and I love community. So let's start by just taking a few deep breaths, getting in our body, and then we'll kind of introduce and get into our conversation tonight. So maybe have hands on your heart or hands on your belly, one on each. And we're going to inhale through the nose, exhale out the mouth. And again, inhaling through the nose, exhaling out the mouth. And one more breath in through the nose. And exhale everything out the mouth. And before we open our eyes, we just give ourselves a minute, feeling your hands making contact with your body, feeling yourself in the space, appreciating yourself for being here, and knowing that you get to show up exactly as you are. Let's take one more bonus breath in through the nose and exhale everything out with an audible sigh. Ah, ah, we're here.
You don't know my body, don't tell me how it works now. I will not say sorry for how I make it work out. No, I let myself, all my curves run. Fat self-care, only movement in my world now.
So this is actually our first time meeting. Kate and I have been DM friends, and we'll just be like, the world's fucked up. Why? La, 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 having our little conversations. But I would love if you could introduce yourself and how you kind of became the girl with the microphone.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate, the girl with the microphone. I got that name 3 years ago now because I found a Trump rally protest that was happening weekly near my house. And I decided to troll them with a karaoke microphone and some funny little insults about Trump that I wrote ahead of time. Yeah, so that's what happened overnight. It kind of exploded, and since then I've used the platform to raise a buttload of money, like $30,000-$40,000, I think, for all kinds of progressive causes and elections. So now I'm branching out and I'm starting my own. I've got my own YouTube show weekly, and yeah, that's where I'm at now, and just ramping up for the next election season.
And you have your work cut out for you. And I do love, though, because what I found is, you know, you can't trust everything on the internet, I think it's like very rare to find trusted sources that you're like, okay, like I've seen it, followed you for a bit, and I know that you're not, you're doing your due diligence, you're looking into things, you're making sure that it's factual and based in as much truth as we can know in the moment. um so what's your show like? What's that going to be about? What are you doing there?
Yeah, so it's called The Broadcast Live. The Broad. I'm the Broad, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's a weekly show where I cover headlines in the news, also pop culture stuff that's interesting to me. It's just a way to do more of a long form show. It's usually like an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on things, but I'm in like a real studio and everything. It's a lot of fun. I've had all kinds of guests on already just in the last couple months. Like someone who survived the Children of God cult,
Whoa.
someone who got out of an MLM. So a death doula was the most recent guest, and she was fascinating. Um, right? So I just it's a way for me to branch out and do more of what I enjoy because I very much resist being a one trick pony. And so I've wanted to do something like this for a while and here we are. It's been running since July and there's weekly episodes. They're live, but then they just immediately upload to YouTube so people can watch anytime.
Oh, cool. So there's already a bunch of them going that we can go
Yeah.
zone out in. I love that. So, you know, being fat and on the internet can sometimes be really challenging. Like, what has your experience been like?
Oh, I mean, that was the main thing that people had to say about me when they disagreed with me back when this all started. The vitriol has died down for the most part, but back then, I mean, every other comment was "You're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat," and still, if I do like because now I'm starting to do more on YouTube, like YouTube Shorts, and that's all like young white boys who are just being like groomed for the alt-right pipeline. And so if I post anything political on there, immediately just tons of comments about being fat. Like I don't know what I look like or no one's gonna fuck me. And it's like, first of all, I don't want any of you to fuck me. Like being gross to you is the goal. That is beautiful. That is the point. And I'm a lesbian, so I just really don't care. So yeah, that's that's usually the only defense that people have when they have nothing else to say. And I've gotten probably thousands of comments since
Which
I
is so
started.
tired, right? It's like, can we get creative?
Mhm.
I mean, not that we need any more, creative hate, but it's boring at this point, right? It's like, come
I
on.
would respect it. I would respect a good fat joke, but it's literally just, oh, don't worry about getting an abortion. No one's going to want to have sex with you. Literally the same thing over and over again. It's like, guys, I'm so bored.
Yeah, yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So, what keeps you doing this work? Because, like, we talked a little before we started recording, and I think, politics is heavy, especially right now with
Mhm.
everything going on in Gaza. And, like, it's just really, like, how do you keep going? What do you do to take care of yourself?
I could definitely be doing more to take care of myself, as specifically like taking breaks and stuff like that. But this is stuff I've always done. I've always been obnoxious on the internet, but it was just for a very small group of people. It was just my friends and family who were getting sick of me, not, people nationwide. So I do it because I don't think I could not do it. It's just like a reflex that I have to be involved in talking about it and trying to share information. Like it's just I'm just wired this way to some degree, I think.
Yeah.
And I also have some sort of thing missing where I don't care about people being mad at me. So I think I'm
Oh,
kind of well primed for this.
I feel like that's the biggest thing that keeps people from talking about, things that are important is like, who's going to be mad at me, especially right now with everyone so divided. How, so you really just don't care?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, right now is a little bit different because this is the first time that a lot of people who I agree with on just about everything are feeling disappointed in me. And this is happening from both camps of the people that are pro-Palestinian liberation, which I am, and people who are pro-Israel. Um, if I talk about the hostages, which is totally a real and heartbreaking thing, then the people who are pro-Palestine think that I hate Palestinians and want them to die. And that makes me feel horrible, right? And then if I say what's happening in Gaza is fucked up, then Jewish people who I grew up with tons of Jewish people are like, "Oh, so we should be killed?" And it's like, "No, I don't feel that way at all." So this has been the first thing that's been a lot less cut and dry. So it's not as easy to navigate because I'm used to an echo chamber to some degree, right? Like I think we're all used to that. We sort of cultivate an environment where we agree with each other. And now it's very clear that this is an issue that we do not agree on the left. They're like progressives, liberals, centrists, whatever. Like there's a lot of us that don't agree on this, who agree on just about everything else. So that's been tough. It's been tough to be called anti-Semitic over and over again,
I'm getting that as well. Yeah. And I think that's,
or being called an Israeli operative as well. So like I'm getting both. It's just very strange, and I don't want to hurt people, and that's been the hardest thing to navigate, is trying to like say things without hurting people. It's impossible right now.
yeah. What do you like? What do you do? What is like your personal action? You like, is it sharing? Are you, like if people are like, well, what can I do, who might be watching? How can they?
Mm.
I think there's a lot of hopelessness, and hope is a practice, right? It's a liberatory practice that we need to like root into. So, what gives you hope, and what do you kind of like offer to people when they're like, what do I do?
Well, the what I've started really using my platform for during this time in history is to get people to remember to check their sources, because there is so much misinformation, disinformation flying so fast, and people are out of confirmation bias just sharing things blindly that are completely made up. And now that we're in the age of AI, that's even easier to do. And so I have decided that the best thing I can do right now is check sources before I share things, because I have DMs full of stuff that people want me to share. And a lot of times the best thing you can do is ask questions about something you've received. Where did it come from? When was it made? Who made it? So you can understand if there's a bias to it, if there's an angle to it, if it's done in good faith or not. For me, like the misinformation is a huge problem right now. And so that's what I've been focusing on. And that, again, isn't very popular with a lot of people, but I think it's important. So I would say for somebody who isn't in the political creator sphere, just check sources, ask questions when people share stuff with you. It's kind of amazing how quickly they're like, oh, I don't know, let me check. And then they're like, oh, wait, this was actually from 7, 8 years ago. So asking
Totally.
questions is so important right now.
And I think there's also, I've noticed like, you know, I used to go to comments because I was like, is this video real? Like, what's happening? Because, there's that's part of social media is like the clout, doing something for shock value or whatever. And so
Yeah.
what I do love is that a lot of people, are either like in the comments, especially when it's causing reporters, like they're translating it so that if the audio is removed, or like I'm noticing people are being like, when was, they're asking those questions. And so you can actually gather information within the post people are sharing, and then go check it yourself as well with like some of those breadcrumbs. So I think that's helpful if you're like, how do I trust this? I think AI is, it's making it so much harder because it's like so easy to generate propaganda and just frivolous random
Yes.
things.
Hmm. Yeah, totally.
How do you, what is your like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I need to do something. What's your go-to thing to do when you feel like, you've been hit by a boulder of information or trauma dumping or whatever?
Definitely taking a break, like 2, 3 days off is the thing that really makes me feel like it brings back my energy. Um, Getting off of the internet, getting off the couch, like going outside, seeing people, because I'm a pretty introverted person, which doesn't seem likely, I think, if you just know me from the internet, but I spend a lot of time by myself, and it gets to a point where I'm like, I need human faces in my face, you know? So I'll go and visit my sister and her kids, and they make me feel more grounded and rooted in what's going on. Or I'll go to a movie, or like just something where I can just not look at my phone for a few hours to a few days. Usually recharges me, and I'll start, getting ideas again and feeling emotions again. So the disconnect is, I mean, I think to some degree people are valid in saying that, you know, rest is a privilege that people like us shouldn't be using right now. But like, I physically can't participate if I am just sleeping all day because of how burnt out and depressed I am. So I think we gotta rest. I think we need to disconnect once in a while with the understanding that we're gonna come back, right? It's not just you tap out and never come back in. You need to come back so other people can rest.
Yeah, I love that. The like tap it, it is, and it is, I think, it's the long game. Like we need to,
Hmm.
we're no good if we, do this as a sprint and burn out and then get really angry and then disappear. That doesn't help anyone. And I think I also ride an edge of like sometimes I'm like I need to look at this. Like I need to let this
Yeah.
hit me and like impact me. And then sometimes it goes into the like, well, I do know what's happening, but I'm just watching and watching. And
Yeah.
um for people's mental health, it is important to take breaks because we do know that we're coming back. And I think, you know, when I have a new rule. I'm not allowed to do any investigating past 9 in my
Mm,
phone. Like I can't at 9. I have to like put it down, read a book. I can watch TV, whatever, because
that's smart.
I'll
That's
get a
smart.
second wind and just go in on
All
everything.
night.
And
Yep.
I
Same.
have nightmares all night, and then it's hard to help spread good information when you're tired and you're like scared, and then I think that's when we don't fact check and we don't do our due diligence, is when it's just too overwhelming. So
Well, yeah,
and
look at Amy Schumer right now. I'll use her as an example. Like the stuff that she's posting is bananas, like such disinformation. And I understand she's coming from a place where she's terrified as a Jewish person, right? Like I understand that, but she needs to take a break. She needs to log off and take a break because she is just sharing misinformation, disinformation. Deborah Messing is doing the same thing where their fear is leading, and they have these huge platforms. They're not helping anybody,
and
especially the Israeli people.
they have the most proximity to money and safety. So it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
And I understand the fear, and that's what's so hard about what happens when we dehumanize people is
Yeah.
that we lose reality.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's I think the two of them right now, they're a testament to what happens when you don't take a break. Like, and I understand that they don't want to because they feel like that's looking away, but like they're doing damage. They're
Yeah.
doing damage and spreading a lot of misinformation. So that's my refrain right now, is to check your sources 2-3 times. Wait 2 days until something new comes out and see if it's the same. Like this is a war zone. It's going to be really hard to get accurate information. So, celebrities included, please take a break.
Celebrities don't do their research all the time. So can we not?
They're actors. They're not foreign policy experts. Like, please, everyone, be a little more critical.
Okay, this is a terrible film reference, but I think of Team America. Have you seen Team America?
Yeah, a zillion
I think
times.
of it all the time when I see these people saying that. I'm like, stop.
We're gonna act, and that's gonna fix it. Yeah.
So, sometimes this is the one I get, and it infuriates me, but I would love to hear how you navigate when someone's like, why do we boycott? Like, my not going to McDonald's, my not going to Starbucks isn't going to do
Mhm.
anything. Like, what would you say to that person, or how would you help them understand why you even boycott?
Well, it does make a difference, right? Like I would probably point them to the fact that Starbucks boycotts have gotten so many unions started around the country. Amazon's boycotts this year, what's his name? Chris Smalls, the union leader for Amazon, has done amazing stuff this year just with people power. A few years ago, gay people, we shut down Target, right? Like they lost so much fucking money because we boycotted them. So I think saying it doesn't do anything is a cop out.
Yeah.
Like just say you want the McDonald's, say you want the Starbucks, like just don't lie and say it doesn't do anything because we have so much information now with the internet to know that strikes and boycotts work.
Yeah.
And so I mean it's such an easy thing for most of us to do. I think if we can do it, we should.
Yeah, and I think it's like important to remember that like you actually do have power, and your power is where you
Mhm.
spend your money in this country. And so putting your money behind businesses and brands that you believe in or who are doing good, or removing it from places that aren't, is important, because
Yeah.
that's where you have power. Even if you don't have a lot of money, you still have some power, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, what do you suggest if people are like, I want a ceasefire? How do I,
Mm.
like, what do I do to share about that? How do I, you know, advocate for that beyond just being upset?
Definitely call your members of Congress. That's the big thing right now is as far as I can tell. Again, I am not an expert
Yeah.
on the protests right now. I am not leading that stuff, but it seems to me what people are saying who are on the ground and who are leading the protests is get in the streets if you are able, and put pressure on your members of Congress, especially if it's Democrats, because Democrats actually tend to listen. So I think we sometimes are afraid to criticize Democrats because we don't want to seem like we're not, in lockstep with each other. But that's the beauty of the Democratic Party is we're not. We're literally not. We're not supposed to be like Republicans. So put pressure on them. Put pressure on them to speak out, to call for a ceasefire, do what you can, follow accounts that are helpful, read books about the Palestinians and the whole shit show that's been happening there for the last 50 plus years. Just starting to educate yourself is really, really important. And then listening to people who are the experts.
I love that. And I recently got the 5 calls app. That thing is amazing. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have. I shared something about it today.
It's
Was
really,
it
so
who
for me,
shared it?
I get, that, have you seen the movie I Love You, Man? With
I feel like I did a long time
Paul
ago.
Rudd and
Yeah, Jason Segel,
yes, and
right?
and every time Paul Rudd would get on the phone, he would like get really nervous and say something weird. That's how I feel when I call my reps, but I've been doing it a lot lately, so I've gotten better. But I love there's the script that you can just like read off if you feel awkward, and it just makes things really easy.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Underbelly Yoga shared something and then I shared it. Take action. Download the 5 calls app was part of it. Search Palestinian owned businesses to support in your area. That's a really good idea. Follow Palestinian journalists on the ground. And they listed some. If you want, you can see my stories and it's all in there. And also, this was an important one. I'm glad that they added call out Islamophobic and anti Semitic speech wherever you see it, because there are um, far right people who are riding the coattails of this to perpetuate a lot of hatred. So if you see people saying like, "Oh, we can't talk about the Jews because the Jews control the media," that's anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Don't let people say shit like that. Please. Please.
And I think I think too, something I'm learning, and it is a little bit hard to learn, is like right now, you can't trust all Western, like you have to. So, what are some trusted news sources that you follow if you, and maybe it's, this could be like a gaping giant question, but like,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
hard
it's
to know
hard.
who to trust.
Because in the beginning, like I was following Al Jazeera, right? And Al Jazeera seemed to be doing a good job, but then people are like, Al Jazeera is owned by Qatar and they're very biased, right? And I was like, okay, well, fuck me. What am I supposed to read now? And then I read Democracy Now, another one that is often very good, but I have seen them posting misinformation about things not related to Israel and Palestine. It's really, really hard to find um, an objective source in
Yeah.
this, and that's been my issue from the beginning. So I think it is important to follow the Palestinian journalists that are in Gaza right now because they're risking their lives. I mean, so many journalists have already been killed, and there is such a lockdown on communication coming out of Gaza right now. So that seems to be the best way to get information on what's happening to the people there. I would not trust the Israeli government or anything from Hamas, right? Like both of them are putting out so much propaganda right now. So basically what I do is I read Al Jazeera, Democracy Now, and then I'll look at like CNN, MSNBC, and
Yeah.
I try to
Find the
find
common.
what the thread is between, like the angles and the maybe it's not full propaganda, but there's different spins, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard. I don't think there is one go-to source right now, besides the journalists who are on the ground.
Yeah, and that's kind of who I've been focusing on. But I think the important thing to highlight is that you can't trust the news only.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Like and I think that might be a radical statement for some, but I think it's important to get a breath of, because especially around this particular situation happening in Gaza, they're controlling the messages that go out. So we're only
Mhm.
getting sort of things that have been viewed through a lens of Israel, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, to some degree, there was the whole issue with like the beheaded babies, right? Where um a source like MSNBC will get things directly from Biden, and it's like, okay, usually the president checks his shit, right? Like he has a ton of people to check his sources, but MSNBC ran with this story because Biden was like, yeah, I totally saw those pictures. He hadn't, right? So like you you cannot trust you can't trust even the news media that we kind of found reliable on this specific issue because there is just it's so complex and there are so many points of view and motivations and motives going into the stories. It's so hard to navigate. It's hard to make a sentence about it without people being upset.
Yeah.
And so writing like a whole news article, it feels impossible to find the objective truth sometimes as a
Yeah.
Westerner who isn't there.
Yeah. And I think it's also hard when you are following like what's happening on the ground for me, and I know I lean a certain way. Like for me it's hard to understand how it's hard to understand, right? Some parts of it,
Mm,
like people dying,
right.
civilians dying, right? That part is just like a no-brainer for me that it's wrong. And so I have started doing even more research because I think people in America just, we had this collective awakening in 2020 around like the way in which our nation operates and runs and was founded, which, a lot of
Mhm.
people I've known for, years, but I think a lot of people it was brand new information. And so I think I'm even noticing I've heard about this conflict since I was a little, right? It's been around our whole lives. And it took me a long time to really stop just believing what I heard on the news or what I saw and like do my own research. And I think clearly that's the theme of this call is like do your fucking research. But also
Yeah.
I think it's like have have grace if you are learning and like you don't have to be an expert here and like please don't position yourself as one because it can hurt a lot of people
Yeah.
as we're seeing with like the Amy Schumers. And I think like everyone has I don't even know where I was going with that. I think everyone is just struggling right now with what to do and how to navigate and like how to just keep your life functioning because business is not usual. It's not, things
Yeah.
are happening and it's important to look at. And it's scary to think what will happen to those people and how this could go for everyone, right? So
Right.
I think that's why I really lean into like reading about the history, but also like reading amazing authors who talk about organizing and, envisioning a new world that does include everyone. And there is, and that
Yeah.
like that kind of hopeful practice of like, what do we want the world to look like is not frivolous dreaming. Like it's the work that needs to be done. And so I
Yeah.
think what I've been practicing is like when I feel really hopeless, it's like, no, I'm not. What do I want to see? Like I feel this and I know this is happening, but like, yeah, I think though that every human being is precious because they exist, right? And so
Mhm.
how do I then go out into my small community and treat everyone with kindness and have patience when people are stressed? And also, how do I take care of myself while doing all of that? I think that's like our
Yeah.
individual work for this time.
Hmm. Yeah. That totally makes sense. And also, like, be mindful of the fact that even if you think, because I don't know if I've said it while we were recording or before, but I grew up in an area with a lot of Jewish people, and I guess because Judaism is such a small religion, a lot of people will never meet a Jewish person, which I think is crazy because I went to like bat mitzvahs, bar mitzvahs, like all this stuff. Even if you think that Jewish people's fear right now is is overblown or exaggerated, it's not as bad as the Palestinians, just have compassion for people, whether wherever their fear is coming from, it's real fear and they are sick from it. Like just like Palestinian people are, like just be cool, like be understanding when you're in the comments. And this is what I try to like tell people in my comment sections, like, please understand that people are being re-traumatized on the internet like every day right now, especially if they're Palestinian or Jewish right now, or Israeli, specifically Israeli. Um, and also because of the way I grew up, I am very capable of understanding that Israel does not equal all Jewish people, right? And for me, it's hard to understand that people don't get that, right? But that is where a lot of anti-Semitism comes from. So it's very complicated. The that side of it is really complicated, and acting like it's not and acting like it's this very simple thing, it's not going to bring us any closer to like understanding each other either. So just have grace and compassion for each other. Assume coming in that people either they mean well or if they sound really upset that they are very scared. Because
Yeah.
that is what it seems to like untangle to when I talk to people in my DMs. Just terror, just very scared.
And I think it's like You know, that quote, when you know better, you do better. I think
Mhm.
that we also have to not assume everyone knows what we know and was taught what we were taught. And
Yeah.
especially the thing I didn't understand, but I am coming to understand is um that there's a whole, I want to say grooming process, but there's a whole
Mm.
process of indoctrination into the idea of Israel
Yep.
that um, if you haven't gone through that, you can see this much more clearly. And I think a lot of people who are raised Zionists who've now come out as like either coming out of it or questioning it now are saying like you don't have a choice to believe anything other than that because you're taught
Yes.
from the jump that this is the right way. And so, you know, it's like meeting someone in rural somewhere who's got a Confederate flag. You know, it's like this, there's the same
Right.
indoctrination into the idea of America as Israel. And I think
Mhm.
that is important to, you don't get through to people by screaming at them if they don't understand. And so,
Right.
no, it's not your job to educate people, but sometimes you just have to leave someone where they're at because they don't have the capacity to understand what you're saying yet. And that doesn't make them a shitty person, but it does make it hard to have a conversation when someone is in that mind frame, right? Like, if you
Yeah.
believe this with your whole heart, it's hard to dissect and gently try to understand if there could be another way. So I think that's not to say anything is okay, but it's to that we are all very fragile people
Right. Yeah,
and we
it's
don't
not
know what we don't
saying that what Israel yeah, it's not saying what Israel is doing is right. It's barbaric and terrible and awful and it needs to
know.
stop right now.
Genocide. Yeah,
But
like,
what you know what I mean? But like what it's saying is a lot of people were raised for generations to believe Israel is the only safe place they can live. Like that is the only place in the world that is safe for them. That's a horrible feeling. That's a
yeah.
horrible feeling of scarcity. One that I don't understand. I was raised Catholic. There's zillions of Catholics, right? But to be such a small religion and to be told that Israel is the only place that's really safe, that's really for us, with a valid history of trauma and being cast out of a lot of places, right? That's what has created this Zionism, right? And this scarcity mindset of we can't go anywhere else and everybody hates us. And so that's what's making, I think, a lot of people feel when they see these huge protests around the world that these protests are anti-Semitic, are anti-Jewish, that they want all Jews to die, because that's the programming working, right? Is that they're just it's self-preservation at this point where you're just terrified that all of this means an end to you and your people, which has been tried a lot of times before. You know, so I understand that. It doesn't mean that I agree with Israel right now or ever or the creation of like of the way it was created, but I understand the people who are living there who
Yeah.
whose greatest sin maybe was being born there, right? And they, a lot of them are peace activists now who are very much against Netanyahu. So anyone who's saying it's not complicated, it's fucking complicated, guys. It's complicated.
Well, and two, I think it's like if you really dissect it, right, the Jewish people are still being used in a way to get an agenda moved forward that isn't really even in line with Judaism. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's real. In that part is really complicated. What's happening in Gaza is that part isn't complicated. That's a
No.
genocide and shouldn't be happening. But I think people
Right.
don't understand the complex web that Israel has created in order to make it a thing that should exist, right? On
Right.
Palestine.
And that the US has created, which is like,
Exactly.
it's like a piece, that's a piece that seems to be left out of the Zionist handbook of like, we would question Israel a lot less if they weren't propped up by the US so much. Like we are very critical of our own government. Like
Yeah.
I had someone in my comments who, or in my DMs, who's an online friend of mine who has family in Israel, and she was like, "Well, what would you do if Obama or if Osama bin Laden built tunnels under Manhattan? What would Obama have done?" And I was like, "He wouldn't have bombed Manhattan. And also, if he had, we would have been really mad about it." Like, that's not that you can make the comparison, but I'm not gonna say, "Hey, that's Osama's fault that all these people died." Like that, I'm not gonna ever say that. So it's a part of the programming that doesn't, or the culture of Zionism, that they kind of ignore like the outside influence of these other countries, which makes it easy for us to criticize them.
Yeah, and I think it's like also what a joke our country is that we are sending billions of dollars and there's so many unhoused, unfed
Yeah.
children here suffering that it's like it's just hard because there is such a connection to the way America was made and the way Israel is made, like, on indigenous land that did not belong to those
Yeah.
two entities. And I think it's interesting because if you have really unpacked America, then you're able to see what's going on. But if that's still something that you haven't started picking at, it's like really hard to see. And I think that's where the complexity comes, is the different levels of understanding what's actually going on and the small parts of truth that's kind of everywhere.
Yeah, and it's also not like it's not entirely oranges or apples to apples, right? Like our version of colonialism is not the same as what's happened in Israel. There were Jewish people living there. It's not, like it's not like it was fully colonized. So like there's just, it's a lot more complicated, but I do think that people are just trying to like take what we've learned about America and our history and sort of put it on what's happening there to sort of simplify it.
Yeah.
And it's just not that simple. It's not that simple. But yes, what's happening in Gaza? Absolutely. War crimes, genocide needs to fucking stop. We need a ceasefire, period.
And I think
Period.
it is a testament. The other thing I think, and I'm going to say this and then I'm going to let everybody else talk.
I know. I did not think we were going to talk for an hour about Israel and Palestine, but hey, here we are.
The great first YouTube. Oh my God.
Hey, you might get a lot of views off it, but maybe watch the comments.
I might turn it right off. I think the other thing that is beautiful about the Palestinian people is that they supported and sent ideas on liberation to our communities as we were navigating things. And so there is this like beautiful organizing that now we're doing to support them that I think is so important. And that gives me hope. Like seeing protesters gives me hope. Seeing people stop doing their normal lives gives me hope because this is so important. Yeah. So, I'm not a political journalist. This is absolutely this was a conversation where we could talk about where we're at and what we've noticed. But I think, please, everyone listening, know that this is our perspective and you have your own, and that's great and wonderful. And now I'm going to open it up to
to everyone to fucking hate us.
Sean
oh God.
Sarah, do you have anything to say, add, or question?
Hey.
Hello. I think back at like the beginning of our conversation, or your conversation, I think that one of the things that piqued my interest was how you're handling the hate that you receive on the internet as somebody in a plus size body, and how you like um you separate yourself from the internet, you take a break, things like that, which is great as well. And do you also like have I mean, in the community, a group of plus size people who you can vent to about these things, or like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff?
All
Yeah,
my best
fat
friends
friend.
are fat. My sister's fat. Like they're all around me. So I actually one of my plus size friends comes on my show sometimes and we just get to talk about like just silly stuff. Like we recently reviewed like plus size Halloween costumes, and how terrible they are. So it's nice to be able to talk in a real way with these people. And I think that has empowered me on the internet to not give a shit.
I
Because, growing
Yeah,
up, I was just so ashamed. And now it's like we can just all hang out and be fat and it's cool.
I worry about when I say something that people view it as invalid, as you were saying, just because of my appearance, excuse me.
Yeah.
And it's even though what you're saying is, your truth and things like that, and it's very difficult.
I know. And I hate to just be like, oh, that's their problem, not yours, right? Like that's such a corny thing to say. But really, if their only argument, if their only way to invalidate you is to be like, you're fat, like the thing that goes in my head is I'm fat, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong. Like being fat does not make me wrong. And also there are way worse things to be in the world than fat. So for me, them trying to make it seem like my size means I can't be right about something has just completely invalidated them and their critique of me. But I will say I have something missing in my brain where I don't really give a shit about these people.
Can you
Probably
share
because
that
I'm
with us?
desensitized to it. Yeah,
Can you
I
share
know,
that with
right?
everybody else?
Well,
Give us a little piece of
just really get it. Get death threats for like 6 months,
it. Okay.
and you'll just be desensitized to it.
Yeah.
That's really because at first when it happened, I remember being really depressed because I was like, oh man, this is all these like teenage boys. And I have teenage boys who are like as nephews, right? I'm like, oh my God, are they talking to women on the internet like this and calling people fat that they disagree with? And it was like really depressing. But then just having it build up over time, I was like, this is what they have. Just because I'm fat doesn't mean I'm wrong. And the more that I learned to accept my own body and show more of my body on the internet, like I felt better about it. Like, yeah, I'm fat, but I'm smart too. Honestly, it's just being fire hosed with your fat for like a year, kind
Breaks
of,
it down and builds back up.
it really builds a thick skin for sure.
Oh yeah, I think being on the internet has really helped me thicken my skin because people are mean and they love to be mean behind a private, no posted.
Always.
The most cowardly thing
Always.
ever. And you're just like, I actually kind of
Right?
feel bad for you that that's how you have to have your existence. You can't even say it to my face with your picture. And even if you do, it's a private profile. And even then,
Yep.
what a sad person.
Or like an anime.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone who's actually said it with their real profile, I'll like tag their girlfriend. And I'm like, do you know that your boyfriend or your husband is talking to women like this on the internet?
I love
That's always
that.
That's a good way to get back at people for sure.
Yeah. And if you're a teenager, I'm going to find your mom on Facebook and I'm going to send her what you fucking said to me. I did that so much in the beginning because I had so many people saying ugly things. So
Well,
just take your revenge where you can.
Thank you.
Don't get upset, just get even.
Mhm.
Shauna, you got anything for us?
No, I was just listening and enjoying it all and stuff. And I think, yeah, it was good.
I'm sorry it was all about something really stressful and
No.
terrible, and I hope that
Look,
it wasn't like
my fault,
upsetting for you
honestly.
guys.
It's me because it's all I can think about, and I just
I know. No, same.
but I think something that some people have come into my comments about is saying like, thank you for saying that being pro-Palestine, you're not anti-Jewish, like you're not being anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
I think like I do appreciate that about this conversation is that we really humanized everybody in the situation a little bit more. While also acknowledging like what's real is real. So
you have to say it plainly. Like you have to say it plainly because there are so many bad actors who are hitchhiking on this to further their anti-Semitic and Islamophobic shit. And I don't stand for that. And I know you don't stand for that. And I don't want Jewish people to feel unsafe in my spaces.
Mhm.
That would make me feel really fucking terrible. So I'm trying. I think to some degree there are people who will never feel safe because they are extremely pro-Israel and they are just in that lane, and I have just had to let them go with kindness, right? But for the most part, I'm trying to hold space for as many people as I can right now.
I think it's kind of like the way that I created Fat Self-Care. I was like, this is for everyone, but we're gonna center fat people. And so the things I'm talking about do center Palestinians because they're being murdered and bombed and all these really terrible things. And so it's like we have to, they don't, people who don't have a voice need our voices. And so I appreciate that you wanted to have this conversation. And I hope that everybody listening can listen with, gentle ears because everybody is upset. Everybody is processing it in their own way. And I think it's important that we do have dialogue. And I think, I fuck with people who will have these conversations with me because not talking about it doesn't get us anywhere. And we help each other understand, have more empathy, have more care for people. And like, that's what it's all about is like, how do we stop the violence and the harming of people? So thank you for being here. I think let's do another 3 deep breaths because that was maybe
let's do it. That was a lot.
Shoulders out. Maybe do a little neck roll. And we're gonna inhale through the nose. Exhale out the mouth. Inhale through the nose. Exhale out the mouth. And one more. Before you open your eyes, we're just going to send all of the light and love and magic and care that we can out into the world so that more people will have more empathy and care about others more. And yeah, you can open your eyes when you're ready. Thank you for being here, Kate. This is a very typical fat self-care conversation because we like to go deep here. So thank you for being here.
I love it.
For sharing your time with us and telling us about you. So if someone's like, okay, how do I find you? How do we find you?
Yeah, I am on Instagram and TikTok, but TikTok's kind of sucks right now. But Instagram and TikTok and YouTube at the girl with a microphone. Instagram's probably the best place to get started. I post links and everything there. If you're listening, I also do a Buy Black holiday shopping guide full of Black-owned businesses, and that comes out next week, the week of Thanksgiving. So come follow me and look.
And
for
that'll
that.
be like a guide of where to shop and who to support.
Last year we had over 250 businesses. I think I'm going to have close to 300 this year. Totally free. I give it away. And it's crowdsourced from my followers. They tell you what they like about the business. all that. It's very,
Oh.
very cool.
So it has like details about different stuff, like why they
Yep,
like.
and it's organized. Yeah, I include like why the person who recommended it liked it, and it's sorted into different categories. It's very, very cool.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, we'll even share that in a Fat Self Care newsletter too.
Cool. That's awesome. I'll send you the link.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope you have a beautiful night. Thank you for being here with us, and
Thank
it's been
you.
wonderful.
You don't know my body, don't tell me how it works now. I wanna say sorry for how I make it work.